Are you looking for an internet talk radio station for your podcast? Look no further. At the helm of Passionate World Talk Radio are two women that want to provide a spot for you and your podcast to be heard. There are many other places for your podcast, but PWTR has the audience. You will not be disappointed. Our station has been on the internet for the past 16 years. Call us for more information. 484-364-1032 or text Jeannie White, station manager at THECONNECTSHOW@gmail.com for podcast show details. Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
Hello, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guests may not represent those of the host or the station. My goodness, I cannot believe it is almost Christmas time and New Year's. And I'm going to tell you all, the older you get, the faster the time goes. You're going to want to stay tuned to this podcast, folks. Have you ever been bullied at work? Have you been a target from a bully? And yes, I call them bullies. And yes, adults, unfortunately, are bullies, and there is bullying in the workplace. I know I have been a victim of being a bully. Well, you're going to want to listen to my guest, who's been on before, and check out the podcast from June 24th when Tanya Joyce was on. Tanya Joyce is an RN. She has a BSN. She is an organizational psychologist. She has a certified professional coach and owner of Strive Professional Consulting and Coaching. Welcome, Tanya Joyce, to Chatting with Betsy.
Hey, Betsy. Nice to talk to you again. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's. It's great to be here talking with you again today.
Oh, thank you. Yes, and happy holidays to you and Happy New Year, and I hope your foot heals really quick.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Tanya, I know I have been a victim of being bullied, and I think it's a shame because the careers of the bullying were in nursing, which I think is just disgusting, and then I was a teacher's aide in a preschool and being bullied there. I don't get it. And like professions that's supposed to be helping people bully each other. And
yeah,
I'd like
it is
to
a
know
phenomenon that's
why.
Weird.
Yes.
Exactly. And
like
and actually,
why?
Betsy, that's what sent me into researching bullying in healthcare. I was, for 9 years of my nursing career, I was a mental health nurse. And then because of having children and a family, I went into clinic management. So I managed a clinic. I was highly respected by doctors and other nurses and patients and so forth, that I never had an incidence of bullying. So that was, 24 years of my career, and I had never experienced anything. It wasn't until I went into the operating room environment, which the operating room is the highest department in the hospital for toxicity, followed by the emergency room and ICU. So unbeknownst to me, I go into this toxic environment, and I was almost immediately started to be bullied. I was a target of bullying. I didn't know what to do with it because I had always been in a profession. People behave professionally, and I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't even know why it was happening to me.
Tanya, were you bullied by the surgeons or the nurses or both?
I have never been bullied by a surgeon. I'm a pretty strong personality, so that part of it's a little hard to bully me from a surgeon's point of view. I also, know my job well and do it well, and I think surgeons generally will treat you better if you know what you're doing and serve them well. That's what they want to be, is just served well to manage their patient. The bullying that I was a part of, or that was towards me, was from other nurses. And that had never happened to me before. I had never had an experience where I was bullied, not since high school had I been bullied.
Wow. I had to interject something here, Tanya, because I want people to really listen to this. You were bullied by females, not any male.
Yes.
Females. So when women complain at how men treat them in the workplace, I have to say this. I was never bullied by a man either. I was bullied by other women. So I think, in my own opinion, that women treat women worse than male coworkers. Yes, you have an occasional male coworker that might have sexual harassment and bullying, but I think you see more females bullying females. That's my opinion. Go ahead.
Yeah, that wasn't part of my research, but I, just in looking and working with people who have been bullied, looking at my own situation, hearing stories from other people, and the research that I did, it does seem to be that it's more female on female. And I think that happens in a lot of areas of life also. I was never bullied by a boy in high school, nor was I bullied by a boy in healthcare. But the women, I think we've long known that we kind of eat our young or eat each other. We don't treat each other very well. And as you said, people complain about men. I haven't had a problem with a man.
Yes, same here. It's, was of women. And, when I was younger, I was bullied by other girls, not by boys. Right. And, what boggles my mind, I know I said this before, it's why in healthcare, when we are there to help people, do we try to, I call it dismantling another human being who's working? We're all there to work. Is it, jealousy? Is it, I think sometimes it's jealousy. I really do.
And when I did my research, it's multifactorial on why targeting happens in the healthcare system. One of the things that I took a good look at is the personality traits of a perpetrator of bullying. And some people that are listening may know about the big 5 in personality traits. There are five contexts which we can take a look at somebody's personality, and it includes agreeableness, conscientiousness, neuroticism, extroversion, and then the ability to be open. And there are some differences between targets and perpetrators in the personality traits that they have. What I found throughout the research is that the targets tend to have higher levels of conscientiousness. That means they're thinking about the work, they're doing good work, they're looking at positive aspects on how they can do better and so forth. They also have a little bit higher of neuroticism, which is kind of the instability of maybe emotions, where they might feel emotions a little bit stronger than other people. And they have lower levels of extroversion, which in my case was not how I am. I am very extroverted, so that one was a little off. Then when you look at the behavior or the characteristics of a perpetrator, they tend to be lower in conscientiousness. So they're not looking at how they can do better. They're not looking at how they can be a better employee or a better coworker. They also are lower in agreeableness. and they're also higher in neuroticism and extroversion. So those are some of the differences. And I think the big factor in what I've seen and what I've researched is the conscientiousness, the wanting to do good by your fellow coworker, your fellow human being even. And that's where I noticed the big difference in a perpetrator and a target. And then also the agreeableness. Targets, it didn't mention in any of the research, but I would have to say the targets that I've met do tend to be more agreeable, acquiesce to what others want, and do want to do better. And then the perpetrators of bullying, they're not so agreeable. They often are, I want it this way, this is about me, and so forth. So I think in those big 5 traits, I think the agreeableness along with the lack of conscientiousness is what creates a perpetrator versus somebody who is targeted.
Do you find that a lot of your perpetrators are in the, I can never pronounce it right, narcissist, there you go, realm? Yes. Actually, again, my research went into the different personality traits in that context. And there's, they call it a dark triad, which is narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. And narcissism is self-centered. They're usually, it's a behavior, personality disorder. So it's from abuse in childhood as well as some genetics involved with it. And that is a self-centeredness. They don't have much empathy. They go about doing what they want for them and only them, and they don't really care what they leave in their wake. Machiavellianism is similar, except for these people plan. They can plan. Where narcissists are a little more impulsive, Machiavellians will plan threats and so forth more readily to serve their needs. And they also use people more as stepping stones to get to where they want. And then psychopathy, I think we all kind of have a good picture of what a psychopath is. They also can just be people that have absolute no remorse for what they're doing. They don't have any feelings towards anything. They kind of go in the moment on what's best going to meet their need. And that can be from anywhere from targeting somebody with bullying to, of course, we've all watched the Datelines and so forth, where then we have the psychopaths that are killing people. In actuality, most psychopaths don't kill people. I believe it is, I can't remember the exact percentage, but most high-level corporate leaders often have high amounts of psychopathic traits. And that's probably why they do well, because they really don't care, what happens. They just want to get to their goal. But those are the three, the dark triad that can be involved in a bully's traits. That's interesting. I think sometimes bullying can take different forms. It may not necessarily be where, like, if I was working with you and I would call you names, I might start saying things about you that aren't true. I could tell people, Tanya, she doesn't know what she's doing. Look what she did. She made a mistake, and blow something out of proportion. Or sometimes this happens, especially I think with in teaching maybe, or when you're working in a small group, if one person gets more than the other person, and the person gets jealous, so they start trouble. I'm like, are you serious, people? I mean, I have to tell this story because it's so unbelievable. I got an extra. I wasn't there at the time somebody gave a gift, so a coworker held it for me. But she looked in it. It was where you could open it. fight it out.
Yeah.
I got an extra gift card than her or the child's group leader. So this person went running to the group leader. Oh, Betsy got an extra gift card. Oh, why did she get it? Why didn't you get it? You're the group leader. And then you cause friction. That person causes friction over nothing.
Yes.
And I said to the group leader, don't be mad at me. Not my fault. She goes, well, I'm the group leader. I said, well, I don't know why they gave me more. Why don't you go ask them? Go ask the parents.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, my husband's literally dying, and you're jealous of a $15 Taco Bell card? Are you kidding me? I would give any
Have the Taco
amount.
Bell card, leave me alone.
Yes. If my husband was normal and was able to work like yours. I mean, but this person was troubled, and she was very self-centered and a narcissist, if I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah, do you feel that she
opinion.
met those? Yeah, so you feel that she met those criteria or those characteristics that I discussed?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Yes. And it just is so mind-boggling because I'm like, hey, you got a gift. God bless you. That's great. I rejoice with you. I mean, it's just like little petty stuff like that. I get passionate about it because it just was mind-boggling to me. It's just so many instances of, okay, someone took someone out for their engagement. Some people weren't invited. Those people that weren't invited caused such a big scene and made people cry over it. That is so unacceptable. That's unprofessional and unacceptable in a work environment.
I would have to agree. Nobody should have to go to work and be intimidated or, there were some times that when I was going to work that I would sit in my car for a few minutes and just think, I don't want to go in there. I don't want to do this. And then what happens is it impacts the target's ability to work. It affects their ability to socialize at work. It affects their self-esteem and their, the way they feel about themselves. It can then spill over to home life. If you're not happy at work, we spend a lot of time at work. If we're not happy at work, if we're going through a stressful situation, we often then bring it home, and then our families suffer as well.
What exactly happened, Tanya, to you? Like as far as bullying, you're, in the OR, which is very toxic. I don't know, it's someone for surgery. I'd hear people yelling back and forth. But it was usually the doctors yelling at the nurses, which is why I asked if you were bullied by a surgeon. But nurses are really awful to each other.
They eat their young.
Yes, yeah.
And they're old too, I guess, because I was a seasoned nurse, and I assume you were a seasoned nurse when it happened to you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, I don't know about you, but I came into it. I had never expected to be bullied. That just wasn't something in my thought process that I could be bullied. Well, I was bullied in the very first hospital that I started in the operating room at, and that one, I would say I would consider that a nuisance. She bullied me pretty badly, but it was a nuisance. It wasn't going to affect my job. And I remember I just pulled her into a workspace and basically told her, this, if you keep doing this to me, it's going to end badly for somebody, and that's not going to be me, is what I told her. And then she, saw that she had a strong adversary, and she quieted down a little bit. The bigger one was when I went to another hospital, and it was a smaller community hospital. We did very general surgery, orthopedics, some general surgery in the belly, and a lot of OBGYN. And I got along with everybody there, and they had hired a woman who from another hospital was known to be quite toxic. And throughout the time, I was moved into a charge nurse position. And the gal that came in that was toxic, she wanted to be charge nurse. She liked the power and control of being charge nurse. And when they gave it to me instead of her, she then started to bully me. She started, talking badly about me to surgeons or to other coworkers or to people in recovery. And that was bothersome to me, but I could handle it. It got to the point where then she pulled in other people. And like you said, there's different levels of uncivil behavior. It goes from incivility where you yell at somebody or you call them names or, you kind of just treat them bad. But incivility, people that are uncivil to everybody. It doesn't become bullying until it's targeted toward a person or a group of people. And then you can go into bullying, and then it gets further into it, and then it's called mobbing. And mobbing is where the perpetrator pulls in other people, and that group of people then bully the single person. And it's kind of like ganging up on somebody. And it was to the point where if I went into the lounge for lunch, I had nowhere to sit. They wouldn't let me sit anywhere. They would stop talking. They would snicker and laugh at me. That felt horrible. I started having lunch in a different area. When it came to blows, we had a bad outcome in one of the operating rooms, and I had done far more than any other charge nurse would have done. I actually went to the department where the surgery was happening, and I assisted with that surgery. I pulled people that were not working in a room or doing any tests in the operating room, and I pulled them to help. So we had a big show of force to try to make this situation go better, and it didn't. And we were talking about it afterwards, and I just felt by this woman that she wasn't happy with me for some reason. And we talked about it a little bit. The next day I come into work, and 8 people, so her and 7 of her friends, had gone to management and told management that I had created the problem for this patient and that I was involved in the poor outcome. The poor outcome was because of me. In that case, Betsy, I was threatened career-wise. That is not the type of nurse I am. I am a really good, conscientious nurse. I do as much as I can to help people. And I actually gave my notice on the spot, because what happens is when a perpetrator goes into mobbing and they grab other people to help, then you have a show of force. And each one of those people throughout the time, before this incident, would go in and complain about me for, little complaints that really weren't worth anything. But they would complain, and then I'd be called into the office. So it's systematically I was getting called into the office for different complaints after different complaint. And it wasn't until this time with the poor patient outcome that I was accused of being the cause of that I realized that my career, my job as a nurse could be in jeopardy. And I actually quit on the spot. I gave a 2-week notice and then went on vacation and never went back. And it took
wow.
me... Go ahead.
That's awful.
Yeah.
That's awful. I'm so sorry that you went through that.
Yeah, and I am not an isolated case. That's the crazy thing, is that it happens to people of all ages, all demographics. The common denominator is always the personality of the perpetrator, and there are people that can do that type of thing to another human being. And like you said, it does happen in the caring professions, which people don't realize. People think that all nurses are great, and all teachers are great, all social workers are great, but they don't see what happens in the wings when they're not seeing those people at work. And then what happens, Betsy, is people get to talking so much to management, then the management and then the organization, unbeknownst to them, gets pulled into this mobbing. They're the ones that now believe the perpetrator, and they start handing down either punishment or, bad reviews or whatever, to the point where now the management and the organization have been pulled into being part of the mobbing, bullying that the perpetrator started. The other thing that perpetrators do, and this did happen to me as well, it wasn't something that I was very concerned about because I'm an upstanding person. I don't have any reason to lie. I kind of tell the truth as it is. And what happens is the perpetrators will at times complain that the target is bullying them. And a lot of times targets don't report for many reasons. They don't report. And so when the perpetrator starts reporting, it seems to be one-sided, that the perpetrator is actually being targeted when that is not the case at all. And so management starts to then believe the perpetrator that this target is being bullied, and it becomes a systematic organizational problem.
You bring up a lot of great points, Tanya, and that's what I was, had talked about earlier. These people go about it very subtle. They're very crafty in how they bully somebody. Like saying things about you. This woman wanted to be charge nurse. She was jealous of you because you were the charge nurse, and now she was bent on destroying you so that she could be the charge nurse. And saying these things to, her friends and other people. And yes, the mobbing. I was a victim of that as well. I worked on a med-surg floor, but this one nurse, she was a morning nurse. I worked the night shift. She, for some reason, did not like me, did not like how I gave report, no matter how I gave it, complained about me. I worked with a coworker, and I heard her give report, but she was dating the supervisor's son, so anything she did was fine. This is how this person gave report. Everyone's fine. Good night. I'd go in detail, and that wasn't good enough. So, right. And then other people, of course, would take this other nurse's side. And I just got to the head nurse, and I said, listen, instead of talking about me behind my back, it's your job to show me then how to give report. So now you could sit here and show me how to give report.
Right.
And I didn't get much flack after that. But, and the more I tried to be, because I would be nervous, and I let this person intimidate me, and the more I tried to be perfect, I felt like I looked more stupid. It was bad.
And that's how it affects affects the target's work life, is then you start changing who you are and how you practice. And then what happens is then it's almost like they can garner more evidence against you if you start acting beyond your normal. It just changes who we are, and we're not used to that. And that does, I think, give them more fodder to then pick on us even more.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
And yeah. Oh, no, yeah. Oh, I definitely, because, you're nervous, you're intimidated. So then out of nervousness, you might forget something. You might forget to say something, or whatever the case might be. And so then you look more incompetent in that person's eyes.
Right.
And I learned
that
really. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and that goes to kind of how our brains work. And I didn't include this very much in my research. There's a study done by a neurosurgeon about what happens when we are we're bullied, and it was on the aspect of a doctor to a nurse, or a doctor to a surgical technologist, or somebody below them. But I think it covers what we go through just in general. When somebody treats you badly or targets you, what happens is we have some changes in our thinking patterns. So the initial thing we do is, when it happens at first, we say, oh my gosh, what just happened? Why? And how can I stop this from happening? So that's all subconscious in our brain. And then what happens is, while we're overthinking what just happened and how we're going to protect ourselves in the future, time keeps passing. And like you said, we might forget to report something. We might forget to hand something to the surgeon. We might perform at a lower level because our brain is actually thinking more about our survival, protecting ourselves in that environment.
I can definitely understand that. I've learned a lesson of not showing again, if someone intimidates me, not to give that person that power. I learned a lesson that I haven't forgotten. But yet, when I was bullied again, I just kind of, took it because I needed the job. And I didn't complain because I didn't know I could. But it was just, it is toxic. And then, you have, and it happened again. This one makes up stories. And then they start making other stories up. One person in the preschool said, I was missing. No, they knew I wasn't missing. I was in the hallway waiting for this kid to get out of the bathroom. And I told them where I was. I can't help it. The kid takes a long time. But it just, it really boggles my mind why people are like that. But what can the target do? Because it's very hard sometimes to face up to a problem and go to management with a problem of bullying. Because the supervisor may not believe you. They might be friends with the perpetrator and may take their side. Like, what does someone do other than to go to someone like you? Because I wish you were around 30-something years ago. Actually, I'll take it 6 years ago.
Yes. And that's one of my specialties, is to help people work through issues like this in the workplace. There's, unfortunately, the way that corporations run today, and I consider the big hospital systems and so forth, they're corporations, they're organizations. They do not allow for people to bring about complaints of bullying very easily. A lot of times it's more considered, people just don't get along, or people, their personalities don't match, and this person is just, complaining, or, it's not really that problematic, which then fuels the bullying. I always tell people to journal. When you go home at work, at night, it doesn't matter how your day went, if it was a great day or if it was a poor day. Just journal a little bit about, things that could have happened. That serves two purposes. One, it can serve a purpose when you actually go to report the bullying. Then you have, on this day when this person wasn't working, this went great. But then on these 3 days when I had to work with this person, this is what happened. And pointing it to patient care. Organizations don't necessarily care about the employees. Employees are seen more as a liability than an asset. And up until recently, nurses were looking for work. And so if one left, there was another one coming down the line. But the journaling also, if you need to go higher than your manager, if you need to go to human resources, then you can go back and say, I keep this journal. On the 2nd of December, this happened. On the 4th of December, this happened. And now today, this happened. And then it's coming from almost real time. It's not remembering in your brain the past. You're actually reading what you wrote at those times. So that's the first thing that I suggest to people. The second thing is I kind of do the 3 strikes, you're out regarding management. If I've told management the same thing 3 times, then I go above them. And that could be either to their director, their leader, or to human resources. Now, both human resources and the next leader may not give much because they both work for the organization. People in that level of management or human resources, they're just doing the job that the organization is telling them to do, and they are also a lot of times moving up the ladder. So my leader's leader could be trying to move up the ladder, and they're not going to do much about it. They'll probably try to pacify. In the work world, there are no laws against bullying. There are no places that you could go to and get legal help from. And that's why it is a lot of times self-preservation. And that's why a lot of times people really do not report, is because nothing is going to happen. The best thing to do is to be a self-advocate. Report immediately. Don't wait to report until this has gone on for, 2-3 months, a year. Because at that point, the target is already injured and probably more emotional about it. And we need to nip it at the bud. We can't let the bullying go on. If we let it go on for, a couple of months, it might be seen as, oh, well, you've been dealing with it for this long, it can't be that bad. So nipping it in the bud, doing a journaling, and, going in the higher ranks if necessary, are the best things that we can do.
Wow, that's very good advice, Tanya. How does someone contact you? Do you do Zoom, like across America?
I do. I actually have more clients from across the country than I do in my own home state. Wow. Yes, I do. Yep. They can, go to my website. It's striveprofessionalmn.com. They can find me on LinkedIn, Tanya Joyce. They can go to Facebook and find my profile on Facebook. And then they can also contact me. My telephone number is 763-807-2721.
I think, I'm going to tell the audience this, but this is my own opinion, listeners. If I knew of a Tanya Joyce 30-something years ago, even 6 years ago, I would have contacted Tanya. I needed someone like her to be able to discuss the bullying because, when you're working with adults, people don't believe you that adults will actually bully other people. And then when you go to management, it's almost like you feel like you're tattletaling, and then you're going to get looked down on for tattletaling. And it's difficult. Do you see bullying being more common now than ever before? And, it could lead to workplace violence.
It definitely does lead to workplace violence. Sometimes on the perpetrator, they just get to a point where they no longer are verbally abusive, but then they become physically abusive. Also on the targets, at some point a target may have reached their emotional capability and can also lash out at that time. And those are people that, are in the depths of the despair of what they can do, and they may have gone to management or may not have gone to management, and they just don't know what else to do. And if you corner a cat, the chances are that the cat's going to lash out at you. And if it's done for a period of time and there's a loss of mental health within the target, which does happen, people become depressed and even suicidal. There have been people that have tried to take their own lives because of bullying at work. if the mental health gets to a point where they're just no longer able to cope, that can happen. And then it looks like, of course, that person was crazy. We told you that person was crazy. Now look what they did. And do I think it's worse? I think we're talking about it more. I don't know, maybe worse than 40 years ago, perhaps. But in the last 15, 20, 25 years, I think that it has been continuously there. People just don't talk about it. People don't go to somebody and say, hey, I've been bullied at work. It's embarrassing, or you may look weak, or you may look incompetent. You don't want to tell people that this is happening to you. I like to relate bullying to being similar to any other form of abuse, whether you're an abused child or an abused wife. People don't talk because it's embarrassing, because they don't want to look down upon. And who's, the quote unquote, who's going to believe me anyway?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Bullying in the workplace setting, the research started in about 1980. And so we know that bullying was occurring, at least at a certain level at that point, and probably beforehand. I can't imagine that bullying started in 1980.
It probably always was, but like you said, people don't want to talk about it. And this is why I talk about these topics on Chatting with Betsy, because we need to take the lid off and talk about it. Bullying does happen in the workplace. Men among men, women with women, women with men, it just goes on. And this is how I feel, Tanya. I think that boys and girls who are bullies when they're young, they grow up, they don't change, they grow up to be the bullies in the workplace.
That's funny that you say that, because I was going to just add that it does. The research does show that if a child was a bully as a child, that they do grow up and there is a higher propensity for them to be bullies as adults. It's part of the personality traits that they have, and our personality is pretty much formed by age 5-ish. That we have that type of a person. The personality that we have as an adult is generally formed by about age 5. So if you're a bully as a kid, or if your child's a bully as a kid, there's a higher chance that they are bullies as an adult.
Yes, I definitely can see that. When working with children for 12 or 13 years, you could see even preschool children, what I call the pecking order. And I would hear them. And I would say, no, you don't, there's no mean talk here. We don't talk that way to our friends. You're going to hurt your friend's feelings. I always try to teach them compassion and empathy. Would you want your friend to say that to you? How would you feel? Well, then that's how they feel, and they don't like it. If you don't like it, they don't like it. And, I think the other coworkers thought I was too hard on the children, but you have to teach them compassion and empathy at a young age. That's how they learn it. I feel very strongly about that. They need to know that they hurt someone's feelings. And when a child isn't taught that, then, they just go on hurting people's feelings, but yet they don't like their feelings hurt. Did you ever notice that with the perpetrator? They could do whatever they want to their target, but the target stands up for themselves. Then the perpetrator goes running. She's picking on me. She hurt my, something like that.
And it goes back to when you brought up narcissism, and even with the dark triad, Machiavellians and the psychopaths really don't care if you hurt their feelings, but a narcissist does. A narcissist is, kind of just a shell of a person. Their behaviors are meant to protect their very vulnerable core, and they do tend to be hyper vulnerable. And if anything is said or done to them, even if it's not in the form of bullying, they will often feel like they are being bullied because their ego and their vulnerabilities are showing and, being fragile and then hurt because of something that somebody else does.
Right. And I think that a person who is a narcissist will know their target, know their vulnerabilities, and use it against them.
With all three of those personalities, they're very astute at figuring out differences in the people that they target. And I'd like to say differences and not weaknesses, because I think if somebody is quieter or introverted, that's not a weakness. That is a personality trait that they use to guide their life, guide their work, and so forth. It is not a weakness. It is a strength for them. But it also makes the perpetrator feel that they're an easier target.
Right. Or a person might see it as a weakness, even though it's not a weakness, but
correct.
Someone who's not of a sound mind, I'd like to say, may see that as a weakness. Oh, they're quiet, they're shy, so they must be weak. I know I've encountered that problem, and I would tell people, don't think of my quietness as a weakness, or then I'm meek. I'm not. Just don't have anything to say. But when I do have something to say, you will hear it. But thank you, Tanya, so much for coming on and sharing your experiences, your knowledge. I just had to tell the audience, and if I sound like a broken record, so be it. If you are bullied at the workplace and you are having trouble, reach out to Tanya and have a consultation with Tanya. I mean, you don't have anything to lose and all to gain. I wish there was more Tanyas. Tanya Joyce is around in all states. And I wish that, organizations would provide people like Tanya to help somebody in a work situation, because it gets out of hand, and we should all be kind to each other. Everyone's fighting a battle. Nobody knows what's going on with someone else's life, and we're all at the workplace because we have to work. I don't think anyone's there as a hobby. They're doing it because they need to put food on the table and pay bills. So why can't we just be kind to each other? Thank you so much, Tanya. I really appreciate you coming on Chatting with Betsy.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure, and it is a subject that I'm, that I'm passionate about. And the other thing, if people call, their first get-to-know me session is always free, and that the last get-to-know me session I had lasted 2 hours, and those are always free. So I talk to somebody as long as they need to. Sometimes that has served their needs, and then other times, most times they come back for, for more. But yes, I will serve their needs for as long as they need to in that first consultation.
Wow, that's really very kind of you to do that. And I know that you're passionate. I can feel it. And that's what I love, to have passionate people on Chatting with Betsy, being passionate about what they do and helping others. And thank you, Tanya Joyce, for coming on and for helping others in a really tough situation. It's tough, folks, being bullied at work. It's not pleasant. I know myself. I've been bullied. And it's not a pleasant situation to walk into work every day, have to put a smile on your face when you feel like crying because your coworkers are mean to you. And it shouldn't be allowed. I really think that people that are in management, when they see it, need to put a stop to it. And now with, I think people can maybe some way sue for, may not call it bullying, maybe they call it discrimination. Maybe they could go under some other name, I don't know. But really, it's a shame that it happens. It really is. And I have to tell parents, guardians, if you are in charge of young children and you see your children being a bully to somebody, be a parent your child, and tell them they shouldn't be behaving that way and explain why. Just don't say stop saying that. Explain why they shouldn't say that. Explain why they shouldn't have that behavior. And maybe we'll have less bullies around. That's my opinion. What do you think, Tanya?
I think prevention is the best medicine, and if we can teach children how to be more kind, we will have a much more kind society.
Yes, absolutely. And that is, parents need to do the prevention, and you just need to make the time if you hear it. And I know a lot of times in my youth, I have heard adults encourage bullying to other children. I've seen adults bully children. That's unacceptable. Unacceptable to me. Parents, adults should not be bullying other children or each other, not at a sports game, not anywhere. So please think about your behavior and what you're showing your children, because they model after you. We are the examples. And that's what I have to say today. Thank you again, Tanya Joyce. Folks, please read the blog. It's going to have information where you can contact Tanya Joyce for a free consultation, for talking to her and see if she can help you. I would definitely do that. And I just want everyone to have a happy and blessed New Year. I want to thank everyone for listening, and please share this podcast, help other people. If you missed any of this podcast, you can hear it again on your favorite podcast channel. It's free to subscribe. I'm on CastBox, Spotify, Spreaker, just to name a few. I want to thank Jeannie White, station manager, Passionate World Talk Radio Network, for writing the blog, producing the show. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, CEO, Passionate World Talk Radio Network, who makes this all possible, to give us a voice, give us a place, an opportunity where our voices could be heard. And I just am very grateful for that. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network. Folks, remember, in a world where you could be anything, please be kind, because the world sure needs it now more than ever. Till we chat again, bye-bye.
Are you looking for an internet talk radio station for your podcast? Look no further. At the helm of Passionate World Talk Radio are two women that want to provide a spot for you and your podcast to be heard. There are many other places for your podcast, but PWTR has the audience. You will not be disappointed. Our station has been on the internet for the past 16 years. Call us for more information. 484-364-1032, or text Jeannie White, station manager, at THECONNECTSHOW@gmail.com for podcast show details. Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the internet.